Okay then, guys, so we're going to make a start, I guess, if that's okay with you. So as I say, welcome to the Staffordshire Business Festival Friday event, where we're going to talk about everything to do with CX. So I'm just going to introduce myself first and I guess who I am and what I do. So Ian Kelsall, I'm the CX Director for Insight 6. And today's session is about how can focusing on customer experience, client experience, or referred to as CX, improve the performance of your business. The session length is going to be about 50 minutes. It certainly won't be any longer than 60 in total. We're going to allow a little time for Q&A at the end. But if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, please pop them into the chat box or the Q&A panel, whichever is your preference, whichever is available, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end of the session. So we're going to talk a little bit today about who are Insight 6 and what kind of business problems do we solve. What is CX and why is that important? Why should we even bother looking at it? What are the typical CX areas that businesses can make? What should a really CX-loaded customer journey look like? What elements make it a really good client experience or customer journey? What CX next steps can you start to take on the back of this webinar to improve your business performance? And what CX opportunities do you have in your business right now? So a bit of a challenge to think about what's going on in your business and what might you want to do to address those concerns. So again, in the chat box or in the Q&A box, whatever works for you, if there are expectations, just to make sure that we cover it off, if there is something on your mind, to make sure this is a good use of your time, to make sure it's helpful to you, or again, you want to talk about anything specific, then please do feel free to drop in the chat box. And again, if we don't cover it off at the end, then I'll be happy to either stay behind or certainly catch up with you after the session. So who are Insight 6 and what problems do they solve? So this is me a little bit younger than I am now. It's good to know that some things don't change, although I'm still tall. I'm not quite as well blessed with hair, and I'm certainly not quite as slim. And I still don't think a red glove ever went with a yellow shirt. So apologies for that little wardrobe malfunction. But as you can see, I've worked with a number of high street retailers, Tesco, M&S, Boots, Chevron, Tesco, and all the while, the key thing was about, well, actually, how do you deliver a great customer experience and how do you look after your people so that they can look after customers? So taking all those learnings from these big businesses into small, medium enterprises of Stoke-on-Trent, Staffordshire, and larger businesses as well, I set up Insight 6 around about 4 years to the day, actually. So September is our 4th year birthday. So we'll celebrate at some point with a cake and maybe a drink tonight as well. So what do we do? Well, first of all, we start to look at what the current reality is. And we start, ironically, for a customer experience business with colleagues. So in many businesses, the actual experience is dictated by the people in the business. It's your team members. So we start with what's their experience, because if they're not happy at work, there's a chance that that's going to leak into the customer experience. So how do we make sure that the colleagues are having a fantastic experience? And actually your place of work is a great, safe place for these guys to work. And we ask them what gets in the way of them delivering a consistently great client experience. It might be training, it might be that they can't get a car parking space, that their particular bus always runs late, who knows? But if there are irritants in the colleague experience or the employee experience, that will inevitably affect the customer experience. We then go on to measure what is the customer experience. So again, this is a real good area to talk about benchmarking. Lots of business owners tell us what they think the customer experience is, but they don't actually know. It's difficult to measure or they're not quite sure. So how do we get a real grasp of what the current reality is? What is it like to be a customer of yours? And if you don't have feedback and you don't have mechanics in place that give you an insight as to what your customers are experiencing, it's very difficult for you to know whether this is good or bad, and how do you carry on doing the things that work, and how do you fix the things that you might not know are broken. And then the last part of the current reality is we start to look at the processes that you follow. So most businesses that we work with typically have fairly good processes. They work, they're functional, they deliver the things that they need them to deliver. But actually with a small enhancement, they can actually become much more customer focused and deliver a much better client experience. We don't tend to be working with businesses that have got really poor processes. So it's about how do we enhance them. And again, you'll hear a little bit about today around NPS and scoring, which is a 0 to 10 system. So again, if you were to score your processes, most of the businesses we work with have got processes that they themselves score 6 or 7 or 8 out of 10. Our challenge is how do you make them 9s and 10s? And then having got a bit of an idea as to what's currently going on, we then move into the transition phase, the transformation phase, and we then develop capability within your teams. We also help to deliver the change itself. So through a constant coaching and mentoring program, we hold the hands of our clients to make sure that they actually get some return on the investment and actually deliver the change they're looking for. We don't sit there and tell you what to do and then lead you to it. And the fruits of our labor essentially is sales and profit growth. So we do that through improving colleague loyalty and reducing recruitment costs, improving customer loyalty, so you stop losing customers you fought hard to attain. We create brand advocacy, and again, that's across both colleagues and customers. You know, they're the most powerful form of marketing you can have if people are walking around saying good things about you. So our challenge is to create more advocates for your business. And then last but not least, again, getting more new customers or getting more good colleagues through talent recruitment. What works well for your existing customers will also work well for your new customers. So again, let's find out what works well and then repeat that to get new clients as well as keep the ones you have. With COVID, we also then start to look at, well, actually, are the place of work, is it a great, safe place to work? Do people feel safe at work? And both that's physical and psychological safety. You've heard a lot about that, I'm sure. And actually, is it a safe place for clients to visit? Because clearly, part of the experience, safety has always been a part of the experience, but it's much more critical given the last 18 months we've gone through, and it's certainly top of the agenda. You're not going to go and visit any business, I'm sure, more than twice that you feel doesn't operate safely or puts the health of you or your family at risk. So it's really, really come to the fore over the last 18 months. And how do we do that? Well, fundamentally, we help our clients look after their customers better by providing insights and improvements to CX so that they grow, develop and be more successful. And we've got a range of tools we use to do that. So CX benchmarking is actually mystery shopping, and that's not a retail element. Mystery shopping can be done face-to-face, it can be done over the phone, it can be done online, the digital experience. We can do all of those things as part of the CX benchmarking. So again, if you're a call center, if you're an estate agent, if you're a car salesperson, if you're an accountant, we can probably road test what it's like to be on the receiving end of the service you provide by mystery shopping. We also look at the journey mapping, as I said before, business processes and how we make them more customer friendly. We've got online feedback tools that help you to find out what works and what doesn't work, so you can start to make changes based on what your customers tell you, not necessarily what you think, but actually what the customers say. And as I said before, we train and develop our clients and we work with them to implement the change through focus groups, CX coaching and CX mentoring. So that's kind of what we do. Who do we do that with? So again, we work across a variety of different sectors, as you can see. So we work in academic circles, we work with professional services, we work with retailers, and we work with associations and groups as well. Fundamentally, if you are a business that cares about your people and cares about your customers and wants to make a difference through improving the customer experience, no matter how big or small or what sector you work in, we can help and make a difference. So why do clients come to us, or what typical CX problems do they have? Well, often they're frustrated that they're constantly spending more in marketing, and that's not just a budget, that's time, effort, money, but actually the client numbers don't grow. Their sales are flatlined, or in some cases are actually going backwards. There's a bit of a concern that the average value per customer is static. You know, we all know that actually part of our challenge is to get new customers, but also to get those that are with us to spend a little bit more. And if the average value isn't going up, then that can also cause a bit of concern. They're often upset, colleagues are disengaged, and it's difficult to get them behind business initiatives, difficult to get them excited about transforming into different parts of the sector or doing different things. And they're often disappointed at high levels of staff turnover. Recruiting good people is difficult. Losing good people is disappointing. And it's high risk as well if you're into high labor turnover. And that's often an indication of poor customer experience because of the high turnover of staff. So they don't get inducted properly, they don't get trained properly, exit interviews aren't concluded either. So it's very difficult to find out why people are getting disengaged or disenfranchised if we don't ask those questions. So, social media is so powerful, as we all know, the power of the word of mouth. You can damage an online reputation just with the press of a button. Lots of businesses feel very anxious about that. If you speak to most restaurant owners, none of them particularly like TripAdvisor, but it's a necessary evil. And obviously that's the digital window to your business, what other people read about you, and Google reviews as an example. They're often nervous that their weakest customer facing link isn't strong enough. So again, on Thursdays, it's okay because we've got the dream team in, but Friday afternoons are really, really tough because we don't have a great team. And you don't really want people to find out. That public glare test is a good way of looking at it. And again, we hear this a lot, that people worry about asking for feedback. They just take some comfort in the fact that no complaints or no news is good news. And obviously it's not. Crossing your fingers and burying your head in the sand and putting your fingers in your ears, it really isn't a robust enough strategy to retain your best clients and grow. We find that many people are not particularly confident about what they do well. So in most of the businesses we work with, when you actually ask clients for feedback, they tell you lots of good things. They tell you the things that you do well. It's just that you didn't know that they were important. You didn't know that's what customers love. So therefore, it's very difficult for you to carry on doing those things. They're often nervous that they're going to find out negative blind spots and obviously miss out on those opportunities to fix small irritants. And get really frustrated and angry actually when the customer's gone. Once the customers decide to leave you and go and visit your competition, you've missed the chance to fix it. And customers will vote with their feet. So what is CX? Well, this is a fairly typical marketing funnel that we will have all seen before. The client goes through a whole heap of processes through awareness, discovery, consideration, and conversion. And at the point they start to consider giving you money, you're delivering your products or services, and then there's a bit of post-sale or customer services after. That's a fairly typical marketing funnel I'm sure we've all seen. If you were to translate that into kind of the old world, awareness, discovery, and consideration is really a marketing function. The conversion side is often the sales team's function. And then the delivery and the post-sale side is deemed as customer services. Well, under the realms of CX, that's all covered. And CX is every touch point that a customer goes through from the point they first become aware of you to the point where they're then using your products or services. The whole thing is covered under CX. So you'll see in the marketplace, there are CX directors cropping up in businesses. And the chances are that marketing and directors, sales directors, customer services directors, they're probably going to disappear over the time and all come under the umbrella of CX in some way, shape, or form. So how is customer experience different than service? Well, it depends on from which side that you look. And I apologize if this is making your eyes go a little bit funny, but it illustrates the point quite nicely that there are two ways to look at it. There's the service that you provide, which is often, it's an internal business that tends to look from the inside out, or the experience that's received, which is from the outside looking in. So business owners can talk about the service they give, but they can't really talk about the experience they receive because there's only one group of people that can do that, and that's your customers. It's only the customer that can tell you what it's like to be on the receiving end of the service that you provide. It's about making sure that actually the business world doesn't revolve around you, it actually revolves around them. And again, is another common problem that actually business processes are typically written for what the business needs, and it isn't necessarily what the customer needs. And they can coexist. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And CX is not what you do as a business. It doesn't really matter what the business leaders or the employees think about what they do. That's not really relevant to CX. What really matters to CX is what customers think, and really, really importantly, what customers feel about what you do. It's an emotional connection rather than a functional one, which I'm going to come on to shortly. There are three aspects to measuring CX or customer experience. The first is function. Does it work? And if you're a coffee shop owner, I'm fairly confident nobody pops their head through the door and asks you if your coffee is any good. They just assume that it is, otherwise they wouldn't bother coming in the first place. If you're a law firm, I would wager you've never had a phone call that asked if you're any good at law. They just assume that you are. So when you talk about the function, what it is that you do, sell houses, write wills, make coffee, whatever it will be, it's very difficult to make function as a point of difference because most of your competitors are doing the same thing. Convenience then is the second aspect. So again, making it really easy for customers is really, really important. And then finally, it's the emotional part. How did I feel? Did the person listen to me? Did they understand me? Was there a bit of empathy? And whilst there are three aspects to CX, they're not equal. Actually, the emotional part is about 60% importance. And again, it's this is the opportunity to differentiate. It's very difficult to do around function. You can do a little bit around convenience if you're easier to do business with or easier to find, but you can certainly make a big difference to the emotion. And when people talk about USPs, there are very, very few USPs now, unique selling points in any business, but the emotional connection you have with the business and the CX that you provide can be unique to your business because nobody else has your people. Nobody else has your relationships. So you can differentiate based on emotion just by having a better CX. You'll see a variety of different measures around service or customer satisfaction or CX. So CSAT is a function or measure. It'll measure how satisfied were you with the service you received today? How satisfied were you with your meal? How satisfied were you with your fee earner that did your accounts or whatever it may well be? The customer effort score, which is CES, is a focus on convenience. So how easy did you find it? How did you get through to an operative within the 3 rings? It's a measure of convenience. What we want to talk about a little bit today is Net Promoter Score, or NPS. You may have heard about it before, but this is a real good measure of loyalty or advocacy. And essentially, any survey that you're getting sent that has 0 to 10 on it, that talks about recommends, Any survey that's got red at the end, amber in the middle, and green at the other end is typically, it's an NPS survey. It's trying to understand whether or not you're an advocate for that particular business. And again, I'm going to go into a bit more detail shortly. So the way that NPS works is there are two kinds of feedback that people will gladly give you willingly, and that's really, really bad or really, really good. And most businesses are then sat there not really knowing what the vast majority of people think if they're sat there in the Goldilocks zone of 7s or 8s, not too hot, not too cold. So customers that feel compelled to complain will tell you about it. People that feel really compelled to compliment you will also tell you about it. But what about those who don't? And the way that NPS works is if somebody scores you as a 7 or an 8, you actually get no points for that. It's classed as 0. 7s or 8s are just average. And average doesn't get recommended. If somebody says that you're good and they're a 9 or a 10, i.e. a fan or an advocate, you'd get a point for that. And if somebody is a critic who tells people to stay well away from your business, don't touch you with a barge pole, then you get -1. Martin.
Why is poor got 0 to 6? Why is it not 0 to 4 or 0 to 5?
You'd have to talk about to the creator of the whole NPS model.
Right. Okay.
So again, this isn't an Insight 6 model or an Ian Kelsall model. This is a worldwide measure of NPS. But why they pick 6 and not 5, I don't know. And it's a really good point because again, most people that we talked about, they say, you know what, 7 or 8 is a pretty good score, and it is.
You would think so.
But 7s or 8s don't get you promoted. So the whole thing around NPS is actually, are you willing to say to your friends, family, members of your golf club, hockey club, whatever, to go and use this business? And what they've found is that people that score 6 or below typically say, no, don't go there. They're not very good. 7s or 8s say, do you know what? They might be worth a try. 9s or 10s say, don't go anywhere else. They're the best things in sliced bread. You've saved your search. You've found the right person. And the impact that has on your business is when you look at it, when we ask clients that score 7s or 8s, and this is national surveys, would you use that business again? Around 2/3 would. Did you feel that satisfaction really mattered? Just under half. And actually, would you recommend this business to your friends or colleagues or networks? The answer is, again, 47%. Now look at the difference, 9s and 10s. 96% of people that get a 9 or 10 experience would definitely use the business again. 96% of people felt like they really cared and it mattered, which is important. And 92% of those people scoring 9s and 10s would recommend that business to other people. Now that's important for 2 reasons. I'll come on to one shortly into the presentation. But one of the things we often get asked is, what's the difference then between an 8 and a 9? In terms of the experience, and it's really, really small. It's marginal stuff. You think about British cycling, they first found the ice cream helmets, and that gave them a couple of milliseconds. Then they found the skin suits, another couple of milliseconds. Then they hollowed out the pedal and found another couple of milliseconds. But actually, all these small differences, all these small marginal gains made a massive difference, and CX is the same. So the difference between an 8 and a 9 in most businesses is lots of little bits, and no magic silver bullet. There's no one big answer usually. It's quite small. How does CX work? Sorry, how does NPS work? Well, as I said before, it's a measure that's based on a percentage, then doesn't become a percentage, it becomes quite complicated. So if I illustrate it this way, if you've got 100 people that fill in a survey and 70 score 9 or 10, 20 score 0 to 6, and the 10 that scored 7 or 8 is ignored, actually what you've got is 70% minus 20%, which then they drop the percentage and become 50. So the NPS score is 50. And how's that rate? Well, 50 is good. If you're lower than 0, it means you've got more people walking around saying, don't use this business, and you've got saying, use it. So obviously that's a problem. If you end up level, that's okay. If you end up between 30 and 70, it's good. And obviously 70 to 100 is even better. It's great. And I'm going to show you some brands in a minute to try and context that as well. So here they are. The NPS scores, I can't remember the date of this finance a couple of years ago, but the NPS score for Amazon is 62. The NPS score for Netflix is 68, and the Net Promoter Score for Apple is 69. So they will have critics in there, as you'd expect. They've also got probably lots of 7s and 8s and ambivalent or neutrals, and they'll also have lots of fans because, again, these brands are very, very customer focused. Even sometimes they get stuff wrong, I'm sure, but I think we'd all accept that they are very customer focused. The brand I want to talk to you about today is Tesla. Now, again, I don't know if you've ever experienced a Tesla test drive, but they have a program called Little Big Things. And when you ring Tesla and hopefully arrange your test drive, they'll ask you what kind of car you're looking for, what kind of color combination you're looking for. They'll ask you lots of different questions. What kind of music do you like? What's your favorite news channel? Where do you live? Obviously, to take some details from you. And then when you arrive at Tesla, the test drive that you're going for is in the exact car that you described. It'll be the exact same model with the exact same color combination. The radio will have all your favorite country and Western songs planned into it. And in the sat nav, it will have your home address already set up as home. So you're not driving just any old Tesla, you're driving yours. It's an incredible, easy thing to do, but they get it right. Now, again, there's a lot of debates around, Elon Musk and Tesla, all that kind of good stuff. I haven't got time to go into that today, but they really, really do focus on the small details. So the question, I guess, for you on the call, and maybe some of the people in your network, is actually, what's your NPS score? If you were to ask your customers to score you out of 10, would they be fans? Would they be neutrals? Would they be critics? Do you have more fans than critics? Are you in the negative or are you in the positive? And I raise that for some reason that most people, they just don't know. So it's well worth sometimes thinking about it. And why is that important? Again, Martin's question around 6 or below is important. The way you advertise, if you put an advert in a newspaper or a magazine, nobody really believes you because you've written it. Most people that are advertising, you take any restaurant or theatre, they're not going to turn around and say, do you know what? The matinee performance on a Thursday really isn't very good. So come on a Wednesday. They're going to sit there and say, we're fantastic all the time, which most people don't believe because you've written it. You are not deemed to be independent or unbiased. Whereas actually an online opinion from a genuine consumer, not talking about fake reviews, a genuine consumer, or more importantly, a recommendation from your friend. You go and say, look, I'm going to sell my house, and I know you sold your house recently. Which estate agent did you use? And if they say, well, I used X, Y, and Z, and they were awful, then they become awful. Even though I've never used them before, a friend of mine said they're awful, so in my head, they're awful. That becomes my truth. And I'll never ring them. I'll never find out if it's wrong because I just won't bother because a mate of mine said, don't ring them. Equally, if they say, you want to go to this estate agent, they're fantastic, they're amazing, they're much better than everybody else, then I probably will go there because I've got no reason to doubt what my friend is saying. So recommendations from friends are really important. And again, your own customers, these are your clients. They're like walking billboards. So if they're walking around saying good things about you, that's great. If they're saying bad things about you, that's not so great. But you have to know what they're saying. If you don't know what they're saying, you can't necessarily get involved. So again, if we asked your clients to think back to their most recent experience they'd had with you, what score out of 10 would they give? Is it above 6? Is it 7 or 8? Is it a 9 or a 10? And actually, what score would you give yourselves? And that comes with a word of caution because, of course, there's some research here. 80% of companies that reckon they deliver superior customer service, when their customers were asked, only 8% actually agreed. So there's a massive gap between the perception of a business owner or a business leadership team and their actual customers. So be very careful, I guess, of judging your customer experience by what you think. Talk is cheap. Go out there and ask your customers. Okay. So just moving on to the next part of the presentation now. So what are the typical CX errors that people make? Well, they always say the customer's right, but then they don't listen. So there's no point asking the customers for feedback or picking up on stuff that, deliveries are always wrong or invoices arrive late or we always get damages. If you're listening for this sort of feedback, you'll pick it up. But then what you can't just do is ignore it, because what will happen is they'll get disenchanted, they get disenfranchised, they won't bother telling you next time, and they will eventually leave. So if you truly believe the customer is right, you have to listen to what they're saying. This one is an interesting one. So again, we sell a survey system called Instant Insight. It's a fantastic tool, but there is no point having the survey if you're not going to do anything with it. Asking for feedback and ignoring people is actually worse than not asking for it in the first place. I had an experience with a brand not long ago. They sent me a survey and asked me about my experience, and they scored it out of 5, actually. It wasn't an NPS one. And I scored it as a 0. And I sent it off in one of these telephone ones that then send you another question. So I sent it back to the 0, and the question I got asked was, that's brilliant. What about question 2? Well, 0's not brilliant, is it? So then the next question was also a 0. And I sent that back, and then they came back and said, oh, that's fantastic. What about question 3? So to cut a long story short, I sent in 5 notes. I never got a phone call. I never got an inquiry. Nobody ever picked up the phone and said, actually, Mr. Kelsall, looks like you've had a terrible experience. How do we fix it? Nobody bothered. So they have a survey. They're sending out information. They're getting feedback that says something's wrong, but they don't know anything about it. So avoid that trap of just saying, well, we'll ask for feedback. We'll send a survey out, and then they're ticking the box. There's no point unless you're going to do something with it. This is one of my favorite pictures. So again, loads and loads of businesses, they find themselves doing stuff just because that's the way it's always been done. Just not because it works. So again, where does that challenge come from? How do you improve? How do you continually improve your processes if actually all you're going to do is what you did yesterday and the day before? Is it effective, or actually have we become habitually ineffective just because we've become process driven and we're not necessarily taking the time to take our heads down from the ground and have a look around and see what's going on? So processes, be really clear that they deliver what needs to be delivered, rather than the fact that that's just the way we do things around here. And the path to actually succeeding is to keep moving forward. It's to get better. A very good friend of mine, very senior in retail, said, look, if we're not going forwards, we're actually going backwards. There is no such thing as stopping. Everybody else is catching us up. So again, even if you're at the top of your game, carry on improving. So again, quick question. I don't need you to answer this, but it's just a bit of thought really. How much time and money do you spend on trying to get more new clients and customers? We work well with marketeers because they're constantly being beaten up to get more leads, get more footfall, get more awareness. There is no point driving a load of awareness to have a bad experience. It'll be brand damaging. So you have to fix the experience in the first place. How much money or time do you spend not trying to lose your existing customers? And again, most businesses we tend to talk to, they have this a little bit out of kilter. There's lots of money going into marketing and new client acquisition. There's very little activity going into client retention. And actually, another quick question, is it easier to get an existing satisfied client or customer to spend more money with you and deliver some more breadth if you've got lots of different services than convert a new client? Nearly every sector you talk to, loyal clients or customers will visit more often, spend more often, and won't go anywhere else. So that's a great source to grow your business, is to actually have more customer loyalty and try and get more breadth. So we talked a lot about CX and what it scores like, but actually what's involved? Well, there are 6 elements to this. The first thing is you've got to do what you say you're going to do. And obviously Ron Steele, for those of us old enough to remember the advert, was really quite simple and does what it says in the tin, doesn't it? You know, you can't say something and then not do it. So if you're making promises to your clients or your customers, you have to make sure you deliver that. There's no point saying somebody's going to be delivered Friday and then it arrives Sunday. If it's going to arrive Sunday, you've got to say it's Sunday. So customers will be very unforgiving if you don't do what you say you're going to do. Speed of service, this is a good one as well. Most businesses, they tend to do things based on their needs and how quickly they can turn things around. And actually the speed of service for your clients or your customer, you've got members there, whatever, you've got patients, members, students, it doesn't matter. They're all universal terms for customers. Knowing what they need in terms of speed is really important, and making sure you're delivering. And again, if it's beyond reasonableness, if they're asking for things that are not deliverable, you have to manage those expectations. But doing things at a time that suits you and not them is not good CX. This is another good one as well. If there's a problem, sort it out quickly or as quickly as you can. There's something called the service paradox. And the service paradox says that it's actually possible to be more loyal to a brand when you've encountered a problem based on how well they deal with the problem than had the problem never occurred in the first place. So businesses get things wrong. Customers and clients expect you to get stuff wrong. They're going to be fairly forgiving of you getting stuff wrong if you react in the right way and you fix the problem within as fast as you can and with all reasonableness. What they don't want is lots of justification, lots of excuses, and lots of it's not my fault. They're dealing with you and they expect to sort it out. So again, it is possible that when stuff goes wrong, it's the biggest opportunity to improve customer loyalty, not that the fact you've lost that customer at all, because lots of businesses, they don't get this bit right. They expect you to be experts in your field, but actually what they really want is for you to be friendly at the same time. As I said before, nobody rings a law firm and asks if they're any good at law. They expect you to be good at law. They expect a coffee shop to make good coffee. What they actually want is to be served and treated and listened to and understood in all those examples. So again, you talking about how good you are at your job and how good you are at your function just doesn't cut it. It's got to be a bit more than that. We need to listen to people a lot more often before we offer helpful advice. Again, you'll all be familiar, I'm sure, with various things around listening to understand and Steve Covey and all that kind of good stuff. But as humans, we've lost the art of listening. We're too busy trying to talk. We're too busy trying to tell people. And actually, a lot of our customers, they just want to be heard. They want to be listened to. They want to know that actually it matters to you, that you care about what they're going through. And then consistency is really important. So again, most of the big brands that you'll think are pretty good for customer experience, be that British Airways, Starbucks, Marks and Spencer's, Amazon, you name it, any of these bigger brands, building societies, banks, who knows, they generally are really, really good consistently. rather than being fantastic one week and then awful the next. And the way I describe this, again, it's about having processes and having a consistent process you can follow. So if you think about filling a kettle with water, select in the cup, putting coffee and sugar in. This is my coffee, by the way. Put in milk and blend. Very important that you blend. Somebody once told me that you'll burn the coffee. I don't know how true it is, but that's what I believe. Pour in the water, stir it anti-clockwise. Again, I don't quite know why, I just do. It just always goes anti-clockwise. And I follow that process religiously when I make myself a cup of coffee and anybody else a cup of coffee. And it's a long time since I made myself a really bad cup of coffee, because that's the way it works for me. So therefore, I just follow that process. Now, if I was to miss out the coffee and the sugar, it'd be a pretty awful cup of tea. Well, a cup of coffee, as far as I'm concerned. If I forgot to put in the boiling water, again, now I've got this paste of coffee and sugar and all sorts of things. So yeah, with any customer journey, any customer process, you have to make sure that it works. It has to be right for you. And if it doesn't work, change it. But at some point, you'll find a way of delivering a great customer experience. And then the challenge is about, well, how do you do that across all of your teams and all of your branches and all the days you operate for all of your clients? But coming up with a consistent process that works is the important bit. So what can be done to improve business performance around CX? So one of these things around managing expectations and improve the actual experience. So I talk about here, you've got two possible levers. So if you look at the definition of satisfaction, it actually occurs where the experience is greater than the expectations. So you've got two levers to pull here. You can either dial down expectations, which has its place. I'm not sitting there saying, you know what, go and tell everyone that you're going to be rubbish and then knock their socks off. That's not a good business plan. Or you can improve the actual experience. So it's slightly better than they thought. And I'm going to use two brands that most people recognize just to illustrate this point. But if you think about dialing down expectations, Aldi is a great example. You know, and again, I don't know what your expectations are, but mine would be, I probably can't get everything that I want. The fresh food won't last quite as long as some supermarkets. The hieroglyphics they use on the meat, I don't really understand, so I don't know when it's going to go out of date. I'm not really expecting to catch the shopper when it gets fizzed past me, and I'm going to get made to feel really uncomfortable when I stand at that checking my receipt. And then it's going to be a nightmare getting off the car park because it's really busy. Now, if any one of those aspects isn't quite as bad as I thought, that's okay. You know, if actually the fresh food lasts a little bit longer, if I actually got a few more things than I thought, if the cashier wasn't quite as speedy, if I got off the car park quite nicely, that's been a good experience because it wasn't as bad as I thought. If you then kind of caveat that with the actual experience and look at the likes of Waitrose, you know, Waitrose are going to struggle really, really badly to ever exceed expectations because they're so high. And there's a reason why when it comes to supermarket of the year, the Aldis and the Lidls of the world, they always win. And it's not because they necessarily give the best experience, if you were to kind of rate it from a superiority point of view, it's because it's the biggest gap between expectations. And they consistently either deliver at them or just above them. So I hope that makes sense. So we would want to start with a CX vision. You know, what do you want to stand for? What's it mean to deliver a customer experience in your business? And I've got a lighthouse and rocks there because, again, visions and plans and strategies, and I know some of you in the call will really subscribe to this because I know the businesses you operate in. You've got to have a plan to keep you safe from rocks. You know, you've got to have a plan that keeps you from making bad decisions. And there's got to be a plan that allows everybody else to also follow your lead. So having some sort of plan or some sort of vision that really does help. And again, I'm not talking about words that are meaningless above a door that somebody's painted quite nicely into some beautiful artwork and nobody can quote it. I'm talking about a proper vision that means something to people. It allows them to make decisions. When they get that feeling in their stomach says, you know what, I'm not really quite sure what I should do, it helps them to make the right decision to always look after the customer. So it has to come alive. It has to mean something rather than just meaningless words. You have to know where you're starting from. So again, another great consultant, Tom Peters, in Search of Excellence, what gets measured gets done. It doesn't really matter what your CX starts at. We've got clients that have done some benchmarking and their scores have been in their 50s. And we also done some benchmarking with clients where their scores have been in the 80s. It doesn't really matter where you start from. What matters is that you make progress. So if you're starting at 50 and it becomes 55, 60, 65, that's great progress. 80, 82, 84, 86, again, great progress. But you have to know where you're starting from. And the world revolves around numbers. So applying a tangible measure to something as intangible as service or as intangible as customer experience is a good place to be. It allows people to get it as well. Find out what matters most to your customers. So as I said before, we've got a range of different tools that allows people to find out what customers want, be that focus groups, mystery shops, instant insight, you name it. But actually talk is also quite cheap. If you're a business where you can talk to your clients or talk to your customers, ask them, why did you pick us? Why did you come across from the competition? Why did you come here every Thursday? What is it about this shop that makes you come here? What is it about this particular business that makes you drive 20 miles past all of our competitors to come to us? Help me understand what we do well. Just ask these questions. It costs you nothing. Just go and talk to somebody. We know that in most sectors, customers, they really want to feel listened to. They want to feel understood. They absolutely want to feel connected, that they matter to you and that you really do care about them. And this is something that's really important as well. I think the last 18 months have certainly pushed the experience agenda further forward than it was before. But as younger people come into the marketplace as well, they will not tolerate poor service. They're much more prepared to pay a slight premium for better service. And experience means far more to them than anything else. So again, they just won't tolerate it anymore. They've got to feel that actually they're not just being sausage machined, it's a bit personalized. Now, again, that doesn't mean you can't have a customer journey that's repeatable, but it still needs to feel personal. And actually you do that through listening, understanding, asking great questions, providing great service, remembering that the person came in, went to Devon for their holidays, or they've just bought a brand new dog called whatever. You can do all these things and make it feel personalized. And I suppose ultimately what they've got to do is feel confident and satisfied that their decision to choose your business was the right one. They have huge amounts of choice as to where they're going to spend their money in virtually every single sector. Something like Apple, that we think is world dominant, only has about 20% of the market share for mobile phone sales. So there are no real big players. There's no unique business. Very, very few people are selling anything unique. So when customers have so much choice and so much variety, when they've picked you and they've graced you with their presence and they want to spend their money with you, they want to feel confident of the right decision. And if they don't, they'll make a different decision. They'll spend their money somewhere else next time. Well, what else do we know? Every single contact you have with the customer influences whether they'll maintain their relationship with you or not, or whether you can expand or deliver it. So as I said before, from the point they start to engage with your brand, from the point of they start to do some Google research, when they look at how many Google reviews you have, what's the quality of your Google reviews? Why are you not on the first page? If I'm looking for a business and all of a sudden I expect you to see at the top and I see 2 or 3 above you, well, why are they better than you? When they go onto your website to look for your client testimonials and there aren't any, or there are, but there's no date on them. So they could have been from years ago. They're starting to measure you and look at you in every single way, shape possible. And every relationship from the point of that to the point they contact you to give you money, to the point where they give you money and then you decide to look after them, will influence whether or not they'll stay with you or not. The CX that you give has to be at least as good as they expect, if not better. Otherwise, the temptation is they'll get their head turned and they'll look at the competition and you risk losing them. The competition will come and try and steal your customers. Price is often a thing that people buy. Come and get a cheaper delivery or get a free meal. But actually, where it's more than just price, where it's a more emotional connection and the experience is good, you can take price out of the equation to some degree. You can't manage expectations, let alone exceed them, if you don't actually know what they are. So actually, what do your customers expect from your business? What is the minimum requirement? What are they looking for? Is it dwell time? Is it experience? Is it speed? Do they want to get in and get out? Or do they want to sit there and watch the world go by? How do you know what to provide if you don't know what they're looking for? And your best customers are definitely your competitors' best potential customers. And if you don't look after your customers, your competitors will gladly welcome them with open arms. There is a gap emerging between the businesses that measure and review the success of their journey versus those that don't. So we work with lots of different sectors and you can see it. Certainly in certain professional services, an example, we've been working in professional services for several years, and you can see that as they're starting to embrace customer experience and do different things, they are pulling away from their competitors. It's not just a sector thing either, because as I said before, businesses are assessing you against those other brands. So you might not be in the same sector as Amazon, but you're still being judged against their standard. You might not be in the same sector as Netflix, but you're still being judged against that standard because they're the brands that your customers are interacting with on a daily basis, and they expect you to be just as good as them, even if it's not the comparable business. So you can learn by looking at what is happening in other sectors. When it comes to feedback, again, if you use it correctly, the feedback you get from customers can help to increase new customer interest and conversion rates. What's good for the goose is definitely good for the gander. It can improve team morale. So again, passing on recognition, celebrating success when people have done things right, supporting team training with different programs or leadership skills is an important part of doing this as well. And we get asked this question a lot with some of our mystery shopping programs. You know, is it about catching people out? No, it's the exact opposite. We want to catch people doing it right. We want to catch people doing it right so that you can go and give them loads of praise and make them feel really good. And if that means that John's got 5 out of 6 right, we celebrate the 5 and we coach him on the 6th. It certainly isn't about giving business owners bullets to fire. It's not about that at all. Increasing customer advocacy will definitely increase customer loyalty and retention, and it will increase sales and bottom line profit. A, because you're expanding clients who are satisfied, but also you'll get more new clients because your marketing team, your clients, will be out there telling other people to come to you. I've currently got the patio ripped up behind me using a landscape garden I've never heard of before because somebody told me he was good, sent me some pictures of his work, and he got the job. I didn't go out and get 5 quotes. I just rang him and said, I've heard you're very good. Can you come around and do it? He booked us in. He's doing the job. He's going to get paid. I didn't search around for him because, again, somebody I trust and respect told me that he was good. So therefore, I assumed he was, and he is. Customer feedback gives you the opportunity to intervene and change things when it's poor. That's really important as well. So you don't lose the customer because you get something wrong. You typically lose the customer because you get lots of things wrong, or you keep getting the same things wrong and you don't care because you've demonstrated you don't care because you didn't fix it. It might be that you didn't know about it. You can't fix what you didn't know was broken. So when you get some poor feedback, or it's not quite as good as you thought, you can intervene and change things. You can step in and make it better. As I said before, the service paradox is a really important thing to think about. And as I said before, celebrating success with teams when they get stuff right is really important. And CX and service and customer compliments, they're all good sources for these kind of things. Something else we get asked an awful lot as well is I'm nervous. I'm nervous about opening Pandora's box. I'm not sure that I should ask the question, what if they say things I don't like? What if also all they say is nasty stuff? It doesn't happen that way. With most of the clients that we work with, they don't get lots of negative feedback. They get good balanced feedback. But actually, the customers feel the way they do about your business, whether you ask them or not. So it's not that you ask and all of a sudden they all think you're awful. If they think you're awful, they think that anyway. They just go around telling everybody else about it. So you asking the question doesn't actually change the way they feel. What it actually changes is your ability to do something about it. And actually, CX expectations, they are changing. They are changing. So today's answers won't solve tomorrow's problems. And that's getting even more so for the last 18 months, the digitization, the focus on convenience. And actually, if you look at everyone ordering from home as an example versus the high street still has its place. But actually, it has to deliver an experience because it can't compete with price or convenience of having something delivered at your door. It can't compete with the availability of thousands and thousands of square foot of warehouse space when they've got retail outlets on the high street. So we have to focus on experience in every single walk of life because people are expecting it to be different. And I think the start of the business festival, the speaker from ASOS, I think he was asked the same question. And he said the high street's not dead at all. It's alive and kicking. It will just be different to the way that it was. It has to deliver a bit different experience. So you can be an omni-channel retailer. You can have bricks and mortar. You can have clicks as well. So getting those experiences right in all the channels is important. So I'm just going to leave you, before we go into that kind of Q&A, just with a couple of questions, I guess, around your own business and some food for thought you can go and have a little think about. So what is the biggest CX challenge or priority that you face in your business right now? And that could be personal, it could be sector, it could be your own operation, who knows? But you will have a challenge, I'm sure, that is a customer-facing or CX challenge that may, hopefully today's session has prompted you to think about. From a cost point of view, again, what does that cost in the past 12 months? And actually, if we don't do something about it, what's it going to cost in the next 3 years? And that cost, again, it doesn't have to be financial. It could be that you don't sleep at night. It could be that you work too many hours. It could be that you miss out on seeing your kids because you're constantly in the office. It doesn't have to be financial. But I guess if there's a customer-facing issue that is bothering you or is affecting you or is costing you something, just have a little think about, well, what might that be? And then from a pleasure point of view and running towards pleasure as opposed to away from the pain of cost, actually, what impact could it have if we could resolve it? There might be an impact if we don't resolve it, but actually, what difference could it make if we actually got it addressed? What difference would it make if I could keep my existing client base, if I could get my existing client base to spend a bit more money with me, visit me more often, buy more expensive items, do more stuff with me? What difference would it make if actually I made it really easy to acquire new clients and maybe dial down my marketing spend or target my marketing spend in a different way, because actually I want to mobilize my entire client force, become walking billboards. Would that make a difference to my sales, to my profits, my quality of life? And then the last question, I guess, is if you believe that actually you do have challenges and you do believe it's costing you something, actually, how committed are you to do something about it? So today isn't the day to go into the whole psychology of change. There are people more qualified than me to talk about it, but change only occurs when people become dissatisfied with the status quo. So actually, if you're not that committed to do something about it, then it's not that big a problem, because you're tolerating and it's fine. And that's okay, it's not a problem. But actually, if you're really, really disappointed or disenfranchised or worried about it, it might be time to actually say, do you know what, I am going to do something about it. And a lot of things we talked about today, inductions, training, feedback, survey monkey type systems, getting feedback from clients and customers, they're often seen as quite difficult things to do, and therefore labor intensive. They're not that difficult when you know what you're doing. So again, these things often get put back just because we think they're a bit unwieldy and a bit difficult to do, and therefore our commitment slips a little bit. But as I say, once you've put together a program and you're truly committed to review your customer experience and try and grow your business by focus on CX, you'll find that it's not quite as onerous or as scary as you first thought. So that's it, I guess, as far as the slide is concerned, which is great. I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, a couple of minutes before I said I was going to be. So I'm quite happy to, again, look at the chat box, any questions, or open up the floor to microphones and the off chance that there's anybody that wants to ask a question. So I guess over to you guys if there are any questions. I can't see everybody's screen, so feel free to shout up if you are on mute. And if there are no questions, that's not a problem. Just checking we've got everybody. Great. Hi, Laura.
Hello. Sorry,
Yes,
I'm a little bit late today, guys. You can probably tell I'm at Uttoxeter Racecourse ready for our live event this afternoon. And my Wi-Fi wasn't particularly great at the beginning of the session. So nice to see you all. Like Ian says, is there any questions for Ian in the chat? I'll just have a quick look. No, that was a fantastic session, by the way, Ian. I caught you literally 5 minutes just after you started. So as you can see, Ian's just put the QR code on the screen there just to let you know that you can scan your mobile phone on that and just give us some honest feedback about the webinar that took place this morning. And this is the final webinar of all of our webinars for the Business Festival week, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And I know Ian's done 2 for us, and they've been absolutely fantastic both times. So thank you so much, Ian. Really appreciate it. And for those of you that you want to pass this on to, or you think it might be useful to somebody else, that's not a problem at all. We have recorded the session today, so you will be able to rewatch it later on when we upload, and any of the other webinars that we've put on for this week's Business Festival. Just want to say a massive thank you again to Ian. Ian, I can't tell you how great and how useful the information is that you give us with all of your webinars. So thank you so much. And if there's nothing from anybody else, I don't think there is, just checking. Yeah, so as Laura said, please feel free to just activate your camera, point at the QR code. As I said, eating our own dog food, it makes everyone chuckle, but as an insight business and advocate customer feedback, clearly it would be remiss and wrong of us to not ask for feedback on the session. So please do take the time out just to give us that feedback. It'd be really, really helpful. So thank you very much for your time. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, everyone. Bye for now. Thank you.